In Quiet Village lived a rich man called Mr. Cole was rich. He took land from people who could not fight him. He used guards to force his way. The village head kept quiet because he feared trouble. Shops bowed when Mr. Cole passed. Doors closed when his guards shouted. Joy grew inside that fear like a plant fed by dark water. Joy was his daughter. She walked like the road belonged to her. She wore bright clothes and sharp shoes. When she moved, people looked away. Not because they loved her, but because they were afraid. Joy grew proud and loud. She liked to make people small with words. That evening the sky was low and the road wet from a quick rain. Mike was coming home from the farm. He had a hoe on his shoulder and the smell of earth in his hair. His shirt was damp. He moved slow, thinking of the yam his mother had put to boil. Joy came in a black car, fast and careless. Her wheels threw mud in a wide splash. Brown water hit Mike from head to foot. He stood stunned, water soaking his shirt. He did not shout. He did not show the anger that lived under his calm face. He only stood and wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Joy rolled down her window and stepped out, heels clicking on the wet road. She stood close, face high, and shouted at him like a judge. "Can't you see?" she shouted. "Or are you blind?" Mike looked at the woman before him. He felt the shame in his wet clothes and the heat rise in his chest. He spoke quiet, the kind of quiet that had a steady edge. "Miss, at least say sorry," he said. "You splashed water on me. You should say sorry, not shout." Joy laughed clean and loud. "Sorry? To who?" "To you," she said. Her laugh cut the air. "You must be very stupid and useless to expect sorry from me. Who do you think you are? In fact, do you know who I am? It is not your fault, dear. I can see how poverty is treating you." She sniffed as if the road smelled badly and turned to go back to her car. Mike felt the words like a cut. He did not move away. He reached forward and grabbed the edge of her sleeve, small and gentle. The touch pulled her back a step. Joy's face changed. Anger burned like a quick fire behind her eyes. "Did you just touch me with this dirty hand?" she screamed. "Do you not know in the next life you cannot afford this cloth?" She lifted her hand and slapped him hard across the face. The sound was like a stick on dry wood. Mike's head turned, the slap stung, and for a beat the road held its breath. People at a distance watched, frozen. Mike did not fall. He had lived many quiet hurts. He breathed in and, without thinking of pride or fear, he returned the slap. His hand hit her cheek clean. It was not a cruelty. It was the answer of a man who had sat under shame for too long and could not hold it anymore. Joy stood shocked. Nobody had ever touched her like that. Her hand flew to her face and trembled. For a moment she seemed like a small child, lost and raw. Then anger dressed her up again. "Go and learn how to respect people," Mike said, voice low but clear. "Money is not God." He turned and walked away. His steps were not fast. They were steady. Joy watched him leave. She watched the back of a man who had slapped her and walked like any other villager. For minutes, she stood trying to make sense of what had happened. Her chest felt heavy, like a drum that would not stop. A long breath left her. She said to no one, "You will regret ever slapping me." Then she climbed into her car. The engine growled and she drove off. When Joy reached home, she slammed the door behind her. Her father, Mr. Cole, was sitting in the living room, reading a newspaper. He looked up sharply when he saw her face. "Joy, what happened to you?" he asked. She threw her handbag on the chair. "Father, that poor farmer slapped me," she cried. "He actually raised his hand and slapped me across the face." Mr. Cole's eyes widened in disbelief. He stood up slowly, anger boiling in his chest. "Who dared to touch my daughter?" "His name is Mike," she said, still shaking. "He's one of those useless poor men who think they can talk to me because they work hard. He even told me to learn respect. Me, Joy Cole." Mr. Cole's face turned red. "Where does this Mike live?" "In that small mud house near the stream," she replied coldly. Mr. Cole's voice dropped low and firm. "I will make him regret ever being born. He will wish he never crossed your path. By tomorrow morning, he will know who I am." He called out for his guards. 6 strong men entered, holding sticks and machetes. "Get ready," Mr. Cole said darkly. "We are visiting a fool tonight." That night, the moon hid behind clouds. The village slept quietly until the sound of footsteps broke the peace. Dogs barked. From inside his small hut, Mike stirred in his sleep. His mother, Mama Ruth, was beside him on the mat, already weak from old age. "Do you hear that?" Mike whispered. She nodded. "It sounds like footsteps." Before they could move, a loud voice shouted from outside, "Come out here before we break this door." Mike rushed to the window and saw men holding torches and sticks. His heart sank when he saw the face of the man standing before them, Mr. Cole himself. Mike stepped outside slowly. "Sir, what are you doing here at this hour? You're disturbing the whole neighborhood." Mr. Cole glared at him. "I'm not here for your useless talk. I'm here because you dared to raise your filthy hand on my daughter." Mike looked at him surprised. "So that girl without manners is your daughter? No wonder she behaves like someone without sense, arrogant, proud, and full of herself." The words cut deep. Mr. Cole's jaw tightened. His face twisted with fury. "Destroy everything," he roared. The guards rushed forward like wild animals. Mike tried to defend himself, but they hit him again and again. They broke his door, smashed his table, tore the little roof that covered their heads. Mama Ruth screamed from inside, "Please stop. He's my only son. Don't kill him." But they dragged her out too. Two men held her arms while others beat Mike. The air filled with shouts, splintering wood, and pain. When they were done, the guards spat on the ground. Mr. Cole looked around, proud of the destruction. "Let this teach you a lesson," he said coldly. "No one touches my family and lives to tell the story." They left, taking the light of their torches with them. Silence returned, heavy and cruel. Mike lay bleeding beside his mother. Rain began to fall gently. His mother's body shivered in the cold. He covered her with his own wrapper, trying to keep her warm, but her breathing grew slower. Before morning came, she was gone. When the sun rose, villagers gathered around the broken house. None of them had dared to come during the attack. They wept quietly as they helped Mike dig the grave behind the small garden. Tears mixed with the wet soil as he buried his mother with trembling hands. By noon, he sat beside the grave, staring at the mound of fresh earth. He felt hollow, like the world had emptied him. He whispered, "Mama, they took everything. They even took your life." Then he heard laughter. He turned his head slowly, and there she was. Joy stood beside her shining car, dressed in bright clothes, fanning herself. Two guards stood behind her. Her smile was wide, cruel, full of satisfaction. Joy's laughter cut through the quiet like a knife. She looked at the grave and at Mike, whose clothes were still wet from tears and dust. "How do you see it?" she asked mockingly, her voice proud and sharp. "I told you I'd make you. Regret touching me. Now, do you believe me?" Mike lifted his head slowly. His eyes were red and tired, his face pale with pain. He said nothing at first. His throat was dry, and words sat heavy behind his tongue. Joy stepped closer, still smiling. "You look lost, Mike. Maybe now you'll understand that some people are born to rule, and others are born to bow. You can't fight those above you. Next time, when you see me coming, you'll kneel before you speak." Mike clenched his fists. His body shook, not from fear, but from anger and grief mixing like fire and oil. He stared at her until she felt uneasy. "Joy," he said quietly, "you've taken everything from me. You destroyed my home. You killed my mother. But hear me, one day, you will look for peace and not find it. One day, you'll remember this moment and cry for it." Joy laughed again, louder this time. The sound echoed in the air, cruel and cold. "You make me cry. You can't even feed yourself. You can't even protect your mother. Look at you, dirty and broken. What can a man like you do to me?" Mike's eyes filled with tears, but he refused to let them fall in front of her. "God sees everything," he said softly, "and the same ground you make others kneel on will one day swallow your pride. Keep dreaming," Joy mocked. "You'll die poor, and no one will remember your name." She turned to her guards. "Let's go. He's not worth my time." The car engine started. Dust rose behind it as she drove off, still laughing. Mike stood there alone beside the grave. He stared at the red earth that covered his mother and whispered, "Mama, I can't stay here. I will leave this place, but I will return one day, stronger. I promise you that." That night, under a sky with no stars, Mike packed what little he had. A torn bag, a few clothes, and the photograph of his mother. His hands shook as he closed the door of the broken house for the last time. He looked around. The silence of the village felt heavy. No one came out. Everyone feared Mr. Cole too much to speak. Mike walked into the darkness. His feet hurt. His heart hurt even more. But his mind burned with one thought: I will make it. I will rise, and they will see me again. The road to the city was long. He begged for lifts from passing trucks, and sometimes he walked until dawn. Hunger followed him, but so did determination. Every step he took away from the village was a step closer to a new life. When he reached the city, he slept by a bus park for days. The air smelled of fuel and smoke. He washed his face with rainwater and looked for small jobs. He carried cement at construction sites. He cleaned shops. He worked as a mechanic's helper. Every day was hard, but he never gave up. Each night, before sleep, he looked up at the dark sky and whispered, "Mama, I will build again. I will make you proud." Back in Quiet Village, Joy celebrated her victory. She told anyone who cared to listen how she taught that useless farmer a lesson. Her father praised her. "That's my daughter," he said proudly. "No one messes with the Cole family." The villagers pretended to smile when they passed, but behind closed doors, they whispered about Mike's suffering and how wicked the Coles had become. Still, no one dared to speak against them. Joy walked around with her head high, her laughter filling the air. She believed her life was perfect. She didn't know that time was moving quietly, waiting to show her that power never lasts forever. The city taught Mike many things. It taught him hunger, patience, pain, and most of all, endurance. In his early years, he lived as if the world owed him nothing. Every morning before sunrise, he woke to the sound of buses honking and traders calling out to early buyers. He would bathe with cold water, wear the same old shirt, and walk to his workshop before others arrived. There, he swept the floor, arranged tools, and waited for work to come. At first, the money he earned was barely enough for food. Some nights, he slept hungry, his stomach groaning as he stared at the ceiling. But he never complained. He reminded himself, "I am not where I used to be." Every day is a step. Over the years, his name grew among the mechanics. When people brought their cars, they said, "Call that quiet man," the one they call Mike. He does clean work. His honesty drew people close, and his humility kept them. One day his boss, Mr. Tund, called him aside. "Mike, I am old," the man said. "My hands shake now when I hold a spanner. I have watched you grow. I have seen your heart. I want you to take over this place." Mike could hardly speak. "Sir, I don't have enough money to buy it." "I didn't say buy," Tund replied, smiling weakly. "I said take it. I know you'll make it bigger. Just promise me one thing. Help the poor boys on the street. Give them the same chance I gave you." Tears filled Mike's eyes. "I promise, sir." That promise became the seed that changed his life. 3 years later, the workshop had grown into a company. The signboard now read Mike Motors and Engineering Works. He employed 20 young men, boys who once roamed the streets. He trained them, paid them fairly, and taught them what he had learned. Work hard, stay humble, never cheat anyone. People began to speak of him with respect. His name was whispered in business meetings. His shop became the most trusted in the city. Banks offered him loans. Investors asked for partnerships. But Mike stayed simple. He wore clean clothes, lived in a quiet part of town, and still kept his mother's picture by his bed. At night, after closing the shop, he would sit outside and think of Quiet Village, the place he had left in pain. He remembered his mother's voice, her laughter, and her grave. He remembered Joy's cruel laughter, her father's proud face, the guards who destroyed their home. And he would whisper, "One day I will go back. But I will not go back in anger. I will go back with proof that life can turn." Back in Quiet Village, time had also been moving, but differently. Mr. Cole's pride had grown into greed. He owned almost every farmland in the area. He built a big house at the center of the village and planted a sign that said Cole Estate. He collected rent from farmers for land that was once theirs. He controlled the local council, bribed the elders, and decided who would become village head. Joy, now in her late 20s, was worse than before. Her beauty had deepened, but so had her pride. She no longer greeted anyone. Her words were sharp like knives. When she entered the market, traders rushed to hide the best fruits, afraid she would demand them for free. She spoke to people as if they were beneath her. The same girls she grew up with now avoided her. She thinks the world is her father's farm, they would whisper. Joy didn't care. In her eyes, power was everything. She believed her father's wealth would never end, and their name would always rule the land. But pride, like a snake, often coils around those who feed it. Their servants began to steal from them. Their workers stopped showing up. The villagers obeyed only out of fear, not respect. The laughter in the Cole mansion no longer sounded like joy. It sounded like noise trying to hide emptiness. One afternoon, as Joy sat on her father's balcony, she looked over the village. Smoke rose from cooking fires. Children played near the stream. For the first time, she felt something strange, a small silence in her chest. She didn't know it, but the same road where she once splashed mud on Mike would soon bring her face to face with the man she had tried to destroy. And that meeting would change everything. But for now, she was still the proud daughter of a feared man. Years rolled by quietly like wine through tall grass. The world had changed, and so had Mike. From the small workshop that once stood by the city bus park, Mike Motors and Engineering Company had become one of the biggest in the state. He had built branches in 3 cities, employed hundreds of workers, and was now known for his honesty and kindness. He dressed in clean suits, drove expensive cars, and lived in a large, beautiful mansion with tall gates and shining marble floors. But even with all his wealth, Mike never forgot where he came from. Every Sunday morning, he drove to the orphanage he built in his mother's name, Ruth Home for the Needy. There, he fed children, paid school fees for the poor, and always reminded them, never use your blessings to make others cry. He was respected and loved. People in the city called him Sir Mike. Those who worked for him said he was humble and fair. He carried his success with quiet grace, never loud, never proud. But far away, in Quiet Village, a different story was being written. Mr. Cole's riches were disappearing like sand in the wind. It started with small debts, first to the bank, then to business partners. Then came bad harvests, unpaid workers, and one mistake after another. He borrowed to pay loans, and borrowed again to cover those loans. Before long, his name, once powerful, became a warning sign in the market. He sold one of his cars, then another, then a piece of land. But the debt didn't go away. The bank letters came every week, red stamps, bold words. The fear that he once gave others was now sitting inside his own house. Joy watched everything fall apart. Her fine clothes grew old. The servants left one by one. The generators stopped working and the gate men stopped coming. Soon, they were eating once a day. Her father's voice lost its strength. He would sit on the veranda for hours, staring at nothing. One evening, he told her quietly, Joy, I should have listened to those who warned me. We lived like gods. Now see where pride has brought us. Joy had no answer. Her own pride had already cracked. School fees were unpaid, and she was forced to drop out. People who once feared her now mocked her behind her back. Children pointed when she passed. That's the woman who used to shout at people, they whispered. The same villagers they once looked down on refused to help. When she went to the market to beg for food, some sellers turned their faces away. You and your father laughed when we were suffering, one old woman said. Now go and laugh alone. The humiliation was deep. Joy would return home with a few pieces of cassava, tears burning her eyes. Sometimes she went to bed hungry so her father could eat. At night, she heard him coughing in his room. The sickness had grown worse, but there was no money for treatment. She tried to borrow, but no one trusted them anymore. They had lost everything: land, cars, servants, respect. The same house that once hosted big men now smelled of emptiness and dust. One morning, Joy sat outside, her stomach empty, her father asleep inside. The wind blew dust across the compound, and she whispered to herself, how did it come to this? Then she remembered Mike, the poor farmer she and her father had once mocked, the man whose mother they had caused to die. The image of his face at the grave came back to her, and her heart tightened with guilt. Maybe God is punishing us, she muttered. Days turned to weeks, and their suffering grew heavier. People no longer greeted her father. The once feared Mr. Cole had become a shadow of himself, coughing, thin and helpless. At last, one afternoon, Joy helped him sit up and said softly, "Father, we can't stay here anymore. Everyone here knows our story. The shame is too much. Let's go to the city. Maybe we can start something new." Mr. Cole sighed. "We have nothing, Joy. Not even transport money." "I will find a way," she said. She went to the market and begged for help. A kind woman who pitied her gave her some money. That evening, Joy and her sick father packed a small bag. A few clothes, some medicines, and an old photo album from better days. They locked the broken door of their once proud house and walked to the park quietly. No one came to say goodbye. As the old bus roared to life and began the long journey to the city, Joy looked out through the cracked window at the village fading behind her. She wiped her tears with the edge of her scarf and whispered, "Maybe in the city, life will give us one more chance." The city was louder than Joy remembered. Horns blared from morning till night. Street sellers shouted over one another, trying to earn a living. The smell of roasted corn mixed with the smoke of exhaust fumes. Life here was fast, and no one cared who you were. Joy and her father arrived with nothing but a small travel bag and worn-out clothes. They rented a tiny room behind a wooden kiosk. The walls leaked when it rained, and rats scratched at night. Mr. Cole's cough grew worse, and most days, Joy had to beg in front of supermarkets just to buy him food. It was a strange sight. The same Joy who once made villagers kneel now standing under the hot sun, begging strangers for help. Her fine hands had turned rough. Her once shiny hair had lost its glow. Every night she cried silently, remembering how her pride had led her here. Still, she didn't give up. One morning, she woke early, washed her face, and told her father, "I'll look for work today. Anything at all. I can't keep begging like this." She walked from street to street, knocking on gates, asking if anyone needed a cleaner, a maid, or a shop attendant. Most people turned her away, some not even opening their gates. It was past noon when she reached a beautiful area she had never seen before. The houses were large, painted bright white, with trim flowers and tall palm trees standing like guards. She was tired, thirsty, and her legs ached. Still, she pushed herself to one more gate, the biggest one on the street. It was a tall black gate with gold linings and a shiny nameplate that read Ruthville Mansion. The name touched her heart without knowing why. She pressed the bell. A security guard came out, well dressed in uniform. "Good afternoon, madam," he said politely. "How can I help you?" Joy swallowed. "Please, I'm looking for work. I can clean, cook, or wash. Anything." The guard looked at her for a moment. "Wait here," he said. "Let me tell Olga's assistant." Joy stood by the gate, wiping sweat from her face. Through the space between the gate and the wall, she could see a large compound filled with green lawns, a fountain, and a black Lamborghini parked near the entrance. The house shone under the sun like something from a dream. Her heart beat fast. She thought, if only I can get a job here, maybe things will change for me and father. After a few minutes, a young woman in office clothes came out. "Good afternoon," she said kindly. "You said you're looking for work." "Yes, Ma," Joy replied quietly. "I can clean, cook, or wash. Anything." The woman looked at her gently. "Do you have experience?" Joy nodded, even though her last real job had been years ago when their cook quit back in the village. "Yes, Ma. I can learn fast." The woman studied her face for a moment, then said, "We need someone to help with cleaning and arranging the house. You will stay in the quarters at the back. The work starts tomorrow morning." Morning? Joy's heart leapt. "Thank you, Ma. God bless you." "You'll meet the master of the house another day," the woman continued. "He travels often, but he's a good man. You'll like working here. Now follow me. I'll show you where you'll stay." Joy followed her, wiping tears quietly. She couldn't believe it. After weeks of begging, she had finally found work. The woman led her through the compound. Joy noticed how everything looked perfect. The shiny cars parked neatly, the fine flowers by the walkway, the water fountain with an inscription that said, "In loving memory of Mama Ruth." The name sounded faintly familiar, but she couldn't remember where she had heard it before. Her new room was small but clean, with a bed, a window, and a little fan that hummed softly. To Joy, it felt like heaven. She sat on the edge of the bed, pressed her hands together, and whispered, "Thank you, Lord." That night, she slept peacefully for the first time in months. She woke early, cleaned the house carefully, mopped the floor until it shone, and dusted the large furniture one by one. The house was quiet and filled with photographs, pictures of the owner shaking hands with important people, standing beside cars, opening buildings. In every photo, Joy noticed one thing, his calm, familiar smile. It stirred something deep inside her, but she shook it off. It's probably just someone I've seen on TV, she thought. She worked hard every day, sweeping, washing, and polishing floors. The other workers liked her quietness. She didn't argue, didn't gossip, and never complained. But sometimes when she walked through the big living room and saw the picture of the man with that gentle smile, her heart would pause a little. Something about him felt close, a face she couldn't forget if she looked long enough. Still, she never asked questions. She was just happy to have food to eat and a roof over her head. And so Joy worked in the beautiful mansion, serving a master she had never met. Not knowing that every time she polished the floors and watered the flowers, she was walking in the very house of the man whose life she once destroyed. Fate had quietly led her back to the beginning. Weeks passed quickly in the grand house. Joy worked quietly, doing her duties with care. The other workers had grown to like her because she never complained. She was gentle and humble, far different from the proud woman she once was. Sometimes, when she swept the long hallway or arranged the flowers near the fountain, her eyes would rest on the picture of the man who owned the house. His calm smile always drew her in. She often wondered, who is he really? There was something about his face, familiar yet distant, that she couldn't place. One bright morning, the mansion was unusually busy. Cars drove in through the gate, workers rushed about, and the cook whispered excitedly, "Olga has returned from his business trip." Joy's heart skipped a beat. In all her time working here, she had never seen the owner. She only knew him by name, Sir Mike. The name brushed against her heart like a forgotten wind. Mike? She thought. It can't be. No, that man must be someone else. She shook the thought away and continued cleaning the veranda. A few minutes later, a black SUV rolled to a stop in front of the mansion. The guard opened the door, and a tall man stepped out, well-dressed, confident, with the calm grace of someone who had known both pain and success. Joy looked up and her world froze. It was him, Mike, the same Mike whose house she and her father had destroyed, the same man she mocked beside his mother's grave, the same poor farmer she once called useless. But this was no longer that poor man. This was Sir Michael, the owner of the mansion, the company, the luxury cars, and the name that carried respect in the city. Her broom fell from her hand. Her legs trembled. Mike stopped when his eyes met hers. For a long, silent moment, neither of them moved. His face was calm, but his eyes told 1,000 stories, pain, memory, and something deeper, mercy. Joy tried to speak, but her voice broke. "Mike, He raised a hand gently. "So you still remember my name?" Tears filled her eyes immediately. "Please, I didn't know this house was yours. I came looking for work. My father is sick. We have nothing." Mike's face softened, but his voice stayed calm. "Joy," he said slowly, "life has a strange way of teaching us. The same road you splashed water on me has brought you here today, to my gate." She bowed her head, ashamed, tears falling freely. "I'm sorry, Mike. I'm sorry for everything we did to you and your mother." Tears rolled down Joy's face. She fell to her knees. "Please forgive me," she cried. "I was foolish, proud, wicked. I destroyed your peace. My father, he's sick now and we've lost everything. I don't deserve your kindness, but please, Mike, forgive me." The other workers stood frozen, unsure whether to step in or not. But Mike walked slowly toward her. He looked down at the woman who once made him bow in pain. "Joy," he said, his voice calm but full of depth, "there was a time when I thought I would never forgive you. You made me bury my mother with my own hands. I swore I would hate you forever. But hatred does not heal, it only burns." He paused, his eyes glistening with emotion. "When I left the village, I asked God to give me strength, not revenge. And he did. I became who I am today because of what you and your father did. So I forgive you not because you deserve it, but because peace is better than pride. Joy sobbed louder. Thank you, Mike. I don't know how to thank you. I don't even know where to start. He reached out and lifted her gently to her feet. Start by forgiving yourself, he said quietly, and by never treating anyone the way you once treated me. Joy nodded, crying harder. I will. I promise. I've learned my lesson the hard way. Mike turned to his assistant and said, find a small place for her father. Let the doctor visit them, and make sure they have food and medicine. Joy gasped. You would help us after everything. He smiled faintly. Because someone must break the circle of cruelty, Joy. Let it end here. Her knees weakened again. She bowed deeply, not out of fear, but out of true remorse. God bless you, Mike, she whispered. Mike turned toward the house. As he walked back inside, Joy stood where she was, watching him disappear through the golden doors, the same man she once saw as poor, now the one saving her life. The wind blew softly across the compound. She looked at the fountain and read the words carved into the stone again. In loving memory of Mama Ruth, the seed of humility. Tears filled her eyes. Mama Ruth, she murmured, your son has become everything we could never be. Kind, humble, and blessed. That night, when Joy returned to her sick father and told him what had happened, he wept silently. We wronged that boy, he whispered weakly. Yet he forgave us. Truly, wealth without kindness is a curse. From that day, Joy worked with humility. She served with respect and gratitude. And though her past could never be erased, she found peace in the man who chose mercy over revenge. For Mike, it was the closing of a long wound. He had lost everything once, his home, his mother, his pride. But in forgiving the people who hurt him, he finally gained what money could never buy, peace.